Hey guys, the last Wordslinger here, and let's talk about the Coen Brothers. Now, I have a long and interesting history with Coen Brothers films. Most of the time I really like their works, such as Fargo, No Country for Old Men, etc., etc. And other times I'm kind of left scratching my head over some films that they make, like Burn After Reading. But True Grit doesn't fall in their usual realm of unusual films. At least it doesn't in my opinion. I mean, it still has that certain Coen Brothers flavor to it. It's just a minor bit. But for the most part, the Coen Brothers, put aside their normal style of filmmaking to make a true adaptation to a fairly popular book that came out back in the 1970s. I think that's when the novelization came out. Anyway, for those of you that aren't familiar with the history of True Grit was a novel that came out in like the 1970s, as I said, and it was generally popular as far as critics and readers were concerned. Then, of course, Hollywood, seeing popularity on the rise, takes advantage of it and makes a movie on it starring John Wayne. Now, a lot of people that were fans of the novel, from what I read, were not particularly fond of the John Wayne movie because they felt it diverged a little too much from the book in some respects. Don't get me wrong, John Wayne won an Oscar for that performance, but like the diehard fans of the book felt that the John Wayne version of the film was not quite on par with what the book was, for various reasons that I won't go into. But the Coen Brothers, years later, have come along and decided to make an honest and faithful adaptation. And they, like I said, they put their normal filmmaking style aside to make this faithful adaptation, and I think it really works. I really enjoyed this movie, and the thing is that I was trying to wrap my head around this movie. Like, I watched it a few days ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I've been thinking about what the underlying themes are, and what symbolism there could have been, and all this, like, really deep, bullshitty critic stuff that critics oftentimes look at. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder if that's really the point of True Grit, or if it's honestly supposed to be... I mean, like, for example, is True Grit a coming-of-age story? It really doesn't seem... The movie didn't really scream coming-of-age story or innocence lost or anything like that, because the character of Maddie, the 14-year-old girl... Well, let me give you the quick premise. The premise of True Grit is that there's this 14-year-old girl, Maddie, whose father is murdered by a man named Cheney. So she goes and retrieves his body to be sent back home for the funeral, and instead of returning with the body, she hires a U.S. Marshal, Rooster Cogburn, to track her father's killer down. And she insists that he go. And along the way, they kind of team up with a Texas Ranger, whose name eludes me. Anyway, and that's basically the whole story, is their journey through the wilderness in tracking down this killer. And like I was saying before, it doesn't really seem like an innocence lost or a coming-of-age tale, because honestly, if you watch the movie and you look at this 14-year-old girl, this Maddie, she acts so much like an adult that it's almost uncharacteristic of a 14-year-old girl, even for the time period. Her witty banter about... I mean, it's not really so much banter. Her witty responses, throwing out legal terms, and it's it's like she's an adult already. And that's why any sort of typical genres and themes that I can think of don't really apply, because every time I try to apply a theme to this, it just doesn't work. It's not about redemption, because no one really gets redeemed. No one really needs redeeming. I mean, yes, like for example, maybe you're saying to yourself it's redemption for this U.S. Marshal. Yeah, I don't think it really applies. I mean, when we initially meet this person, Cogburn, played by the dude. Who was the dude? Give me a second. Jeff Bridges. Yes, played by Jeff Bridges. When we meet the dude played by Jeff Bridges, obviously he's a man that has some issues with, pursuing the criminals that he does, and oftentimes finds himself the killer of these criminals. But he doesn't seem particularly in need of redeeming. He doesn't seem particularly broken up about these killings that he's done. And as the movie continues, he kills a bunch of people. Not innocent people, mind you. These are criminals and people that are trying to kill, Maddie and him, and et cetera, et cetera. So none of the normal genres and themes really apply to this movie, and I think that's why it appeals to me so much. Is that it's just so difficult for me to wrap my head around it is in terms of normal cliches and everything. But it's a really enjoyable movie to watch because, well, first of all, the writing is phenomenal. I don't know if they took the writing directly from the novel, it's like the dialogue directly from the novel itself, or if they adapted it, but the writing is phenomenal. Very quick and witty, and oftentimes very humorous. I mean, listening to Maddie negotiate with one of the merchants in the town that she initially starts in and finds Rooster Cogburn is hilarious. Then listening to the Texas Ranger, played by Matt Damon, and Jeff Bridges' Rooster Cogburn, listening to those two banter back and forth while all three of them are on the trail is I almost really just started roaring with laughter in the theater because I thought it was very funny. And there is a certain amount of violence in this movie. So if you've got one of those weak stomachs and don't like the sight of blood, I wouldn't recommend this movie, despite it being phenomenally good. But if you're kind of weak stomached, I guess you're gonna have to pass. But it's really difficult to talk about. But the character of Maddie, this 14-year-old girl, is so determined and insistent and unwilling to back down from her decision to go with these skilled lawmen to track down her father's killer, that it's just so... It gives you the sense of wanting to just be like, yeah, go. I mean, at times she could be a little grating with her know-it-all, insistent attitude. But that grating eventually becomes kind of an endearing, because you have to realize that all this girl wants is to see this man brought to justice and know that he was brought to justice because he killed her father. That's all that she wants. And she's willing to pay whatever it takes to get this done. I'm trying to think. So many good moments. It was unexpectedly funny. I didn't expect to chuckle as much as I did in this sort of film. But it also made me think a lot, too. The ending is my only issue. It seemed a little, kind of quickly wrapped up and thrown at the audience. But then again, if you view it from a novelization standpoint and view that as like the epilogue of the movie, of the novel, then it makes more sense. So in retrospect, the ending probably wasn't as upsetting as I originally took it to be. I liked the overall feel of it. The whole tale is told from the standpoint of Maddie when she's an older woman, recounting the tale of her journey with Cogburn and the Texas Ranger in search of her father's killer. And it's just the relationships that form through this narrative between Maddie and the two characters is really interesting to watch. Especially between her and Cogburn. Because Cogburn is just a disgusting, he's almost unlikable. But he's almost unlikable, but he's also got kind of a fatherly, hero past his prime kind of quality to him as well. And that kind of shows at the film's climax when he finally steps up and gets the job done. So, all in all, if you get a chance, go see True Grit. If you don't chuckle at the jokes, then you might as well just walk out, because that film's not for you. If you don't chuckle at the witty banter, the witty dialogue, you might as well just leave, because obviously the film's not for you. Unless you're in for the violence. And even then, there's not as much as Kill Bill or any Quentin Tarantino movie. So, if you like witty banter, and you like good characterization, and good story, good narrative, True Grit, can't go wrong. Alright, I'll see you guys later.